Good evening. The opinions and statements voiced by our guests do not necessarily reflect the opinions of this network. Enjoy the shows.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
We've been expecting you.
Monday, time for our maven of the supernatural, Denise Pridemore. This is the Paranormal Pride. Join to listen and chat live on WBHM-DB.com or Spreaker app. Search WBHM-DB every Monday at 7 p.m. Central for your supernatural paranormal fix. Welcome to the Paranormal Pride, where the show is about the guest and the listener.
Welcome to the Paranormal Pride. I'm your host, Denise Pridemore, and tonight I have a co-host, just in case you hear him in the background. That's Mr. Ruby, and because parents have decided that they needed to go out, but I think he's going to behave. But my guest tonight is Richard Estep. You may remember him from paranormal TV shows. Paranormal 911 and the upcoming Paranormal Night Shift. So welcome, Richard, to the Paranormal Pride.
Thanks, Denise. It's a pleasure to be here.
As we were talking during, before the show, I asked you the question about which locations are you known for, and like I said, I saw you on TV for the Black Monk House in the UK, and I know that a lot of people here in the United States saw that, but they have no clue how foreboding the location is. Can you tell them about that?
Yeah, the Black Monk is an interesting case. Here in the US, that's what it's called, the Black Monk House. In the UK, it's known as by its number 30 East Drive in Pontefract. So it's a fairly ordinary-looking house on an ordinary housing estate built on a battlefield from the English Civil War, which was a few hundred years before the American Civil War. And during the 1960s, the late 1960s, it was the scene of one of the most intense poltergeist outbreaks or episodes, or call it what you will, ever documented. And the family in the house, including the neighbors, because it's a co-joined house, phenomena occurs on both sides of the divide, started to see this black-robed figure that they described as being monk-like. So he took on the moniker, if you will, of the Black Monk of Pontefract, Pontefract being the town where the house is in. But the family, in order to try and make him a little less intimidating to them, called him Fred. And so he also goes by the name of Fred. And to this day, that's what the people who take care of the house refer to this entity as.
That's funny that you would call him Fred, but because we have a friend that operates a location, and they call their so-called demon, not truly a demon, of course. They call him Butterscotch. So why not have a sense of humor about it? So it helps. So when you were talking about how dark this location was there any indication of how dark it was? I mean, I know I saw a lot of the story. I tend to forget stuff. So, and you said poltergeist. How bad was the poltergeist activity in the location?
Well, it began as as many of these cases do, more mischievous and playful than anything. A fine shower of powder came down from the ceiling, for example. The lady of the house, Mrs. Pritchard, was tending to the fireplace one morning, and a bunch of keys came down the chimney and landed on her head. So things of that nature. But before long, it became quite sinister, and it culminated in attacks on the Pritchard's young daughter, who was dragged up the stairs in front of several witnesses to the top of the stairs. And of course, at that point, it's become something entirely different. This isn't the kind of thing that you can ignore.
Is it something that you can recreate?
In terms of what? How do you mean recreate?
Not recreate it, but is it something that can be at the same location? Does it happen often enough to where it repeats itself?
Oh, that's a good question. So one of the unique features of this haunting is that most poltergeist cases, as we know, they fizzle out fairly quickly. You know, they're very active, but they have a fairly small lifespan, measured in months or at most a couple of years. But East Drive is still active to this day, although not nearly as intensely as it was during the original episode. So I don't know that poltergeist cases is the correct term for it anymore. The original episode was, and your listeners, if they want to learn more about it, can I recommend Colin Wilson's book, Poltergeist, A Case Study in Destructive Hauntings, which he published after investigating personally during the 1960s. So it's a classic book. And Colin Wilson believed that everything had ended during the 1970s, but the house remained consistently active, and the phenomena would wax and wane until finally Mr. Pritchard died in the house. He died in the upstairs bathroom, in fact, of a heart attack. And Mrs. Pritchard ended up living in that house on her own until she was quite old. Everything, and she would put locks on the interior doors of the house, which is an interesting thing. And we're told that she spent most of her time in the living room and would try to avoid going into other rooms of the house whenever she could. But she ended up moving out of the house to an assisted living, and the house sat empty and on the property market for a few years. In 2012, they made a movie about the case. It was called When the Lights Went Out. And I strongly do recommend checking that out if you can. It's a good film. Not shot on location at the house, however, but based 100% on that case. And the producer of that movie said, I wonder what happened to the real house. And he did some research and saw that it was for sale, and it was for sale at a very low price. So he bought the house, and he did it really as a gimmick. He said, I'm going to have the premiere of my movie in the house where all this stuff happened, which, is, yeah, it's I don't think ever been done before.
Not that I know of. I mean, I know locally, if there's a local legend that ends up on TV, then they'll do it at the location, like a watch party, not a movie premiere. So that is unusual.
It is. And when the movie came out, it generated this upsurge of interest in the case, and people would stop by the house because its location was never secret. And they would, walk up to the door, knock on the neighbor's door and ask if they could take a look around. And so activity began to ramp up in the house again around about 2012. So ever since then, paranormal investigators flock to 30 East Drive, and opinions are divided. Some people say that it's all one big con, that it's being done as a moneymaker and there's nothing to it. And others are convinced that it's one of the most haunted houses in the world. I lived there for 5 days and nights with a small team of investigators, and we definitely experienced paranormal phenomena in that house. It's absolutely a genuine case, or I would never have written a book about it.
Well, you can say that about almost any location because they're not always active all the time, and spirits don't always act on command. Just because you're there doesn't mean that the spirit's going to show for you.
No, that's true. And I think we're guilty of this assumption, or many of us are, that when we say a place is haunted, it's haunted all the time. And the truth is that it's very much a waiting game, as you'll know. When you go into some of these places, you can spend hours, if not days, waiting for something to happen before it finally does, if it ever does. But when I was there for 5 days, it was quite active. I left on a Friday. The following Monday, Nick Groff and Katrina Weidman moved in for 72 hours. They were filming the 72-hour Halloween special of Paranormal Lockdown, and they described it as one of the most intense cases of their career. And Katrina was kind enough to write the intro, the foreword to my book on the Haunting, which I co-wrote with Bill Bongay. And she says to this day, it's a very intense house, and it's not a place where you can let your guard down. She was quite viciously scratched in that place.
Yeah, I mean, once you've been marked by a spirit, it seems that it will continue to happen in other locations.
It may indeed. Certainly she's not the only one, though, to report that happening in the house.
So, so you guys know my co-host has left the room. So I'm done with the co-host thing. So we're going to go back to the beginning. So, because I wanted to get everybody drawn in with the Black Monk House, because, that's a location that's on a lot of people's bucket lists. And, if I could ever go over there, well, right now we're all looking at this and going, oh, we're never going to international travel again. No, we will international travel again. And someday I will make it over to the UK because, we've got Ireland's on my bucket list. And so is all the hauntings over there in England, because hell, they're older than here. It seems like there's a lot more hauntings there than here at times, and then at other times it seems like we have more here than anywhere else, but that's not true. How did you get involved in the paranormal to begin with?
Well, when I was a young boy, I was fascinated in this stuff since I think as long as I can remember. And I was a child of the 70s, so my grandparents had a house that was haunted by the ghost of an old lady. And although I never experienced anything unusual in that house myself, my stepfather and my aunts and uncles all had stories to tell about this old lady that would come into their bedroom at night and tuck them in. And this happened while my grandfather was away at war. This was the Second World War. So this lady was keeping an eye on the children of the house, and it was only when they described her to my grandparents, they realized that this was the old lady that had lived in the house beforehand and had died. So I've always liked that story. And then when they grew up and had families of their own and moved out, she stopped appearing. But the stories fascinated me, and terrified me in equal measure, because I slept alone in that room where all of my aunts and uncles had been bundled up so many years before. And I kept thinking that she might come back and visit in the night, but she never did. And that set me on this road to wanting to learn more about ghosts and hauntings. All of the paranormal interests me, but I'm primarily interested in this aspect of it, hauntings and those kind of things. There were no TV shows back then. There was no Ghost Hunters, there was no Most Haunted or anything of that nature. So if you wanted to learn about this, you went to the library, and that's exactly what I did. I got my first library card and never looked back. I checked out everything in the ghosts and metaphysical aisle, because we weren't even using the word paranormal in the 70s and 80s. Right. And I read everything I could. I read as widely as I could. Researcher authors like Peter Underwood, I think, is the greatest, but Harry Price and his books as well. Certain American authors too. Hans Holzer springs to mind. Mm-hmm. I read everything that I could to get an education. And then when I became an adult, I started investigating with some like-minded friends, and I have never stopped.
And when did you move to the U.S.?
In 1999.
Wow. It's been a little while.
It's been 20 years. In fact, it's 20 years this month. It might even be this week. And I remember it very distinctly. But I brought my love of ghosts and hauntings with me, and I'm lucky enough that I get home under normal circumstances anyway, a couple of times a year to research a haunted location in the UK and write about it.
And how many books do you have?
20-something.
20-something?
Yeah, without looking up and counting. I don't have an exact number, but it's 20-something with more coming. I enjoy very much the writing process because this is how I got into the paranormal, reading about it. And I think that books can give you an experience that no TV show can. I
agree. Because a lot of times when I'm watching the TV show, I'm going, that's fake. They lied. I'm sorry. I'm very forward. Very, very American of me.
Well, I think you can lie in a book too. I mean, it's not impossible, but I think the key is with TV, there's editing. There is always going to be editing.
Right. There's always a point of view that they want you to see. I mean, same as in a book. In the book,
mm-hmm.
you want somebody to see this point of view. But with a book, if you don't agree with the point of view, you take the book back to the library, or you put it up for sale on eBay and go, I'm done with this, or whatever. It's when you're watching TV, it's like, for some reason we don't turn away. I don't know why, but we don't turn away, and we still watch it like it's a train crash, and complain about it. I've only complained about 3 books I've ever read in my life, and I guess it's because when I'm reading a book, I'm reading it from the person who wrote its point of view, not from mine. Okay. When I'm watching TV, I'm watching that from my point of view and the view of the truth. So when you write a book, that's your view of the truth, regardless. That's the truth,
Yeah, we all bring our own biases as writers to writing books, and I've become someone that looks at whenever I'm researching a location, and whenever I'm actually there, I'm always kind of stepping back, taking notes, and looking at how this will play out in a book if a book gets written. Because if we don't get activity, there is no book, and I refuse to fabricate or exaggerate. Right. But a good example would be I wrote a book that came out earlier this year. It was called Gacy's Ghost, and it was about a movie theater in Auburn, Illinois, which is said to be haunted by the serial killer John Wayne Gacy.
The Haunted Art Theater?
Yeah. That was sent my way by Brad and Barry Kling, mm-hmm. and they vouched for it being a genuine haunting. So the owner, Robin Terry, was very kind and allowed me to visit and investigate. And if you're doing an event like that and you're telling that kind of story, I mean, it has to end in a showdown with John Wayne Gacy, right? How can it not? But it doesn't, because I'll put my hand on my heart and tell you that I investigated at the R with my colleagues. We did indeed get some evidence which convinced us that the R is haunted, but we cannot prove distinctly that it's John Wayne Gacy doing it. Now, there's a lot of eyewitness testimony to the effect that it is, but I certainly didn't experience that, and I refuse to say that I did. So, although the book is called Gacy's Ghost, and it includes the experiences of those that say they encountered John Wayne Gacy at the R, my conclusion is, yep, this place is haunted. Couldn't tell you exactly who's doing it or what.
Yeah. A lot of times we assume, in the paranormal, we do assume that the spirit that we're talking to is the one we think we're talking to.
Yeah, you're right. And I always describe, when I'm talking to people about any kind of communication, I always use the analogy of internet chat rooms, you only have their word that they are who they claim to be.
Correct. And, a lot of times you've mistaken that spirit so many times for another name that they just start to answer to that name regardless.
Yes.
And I have a good example of that. And because, once you start saying this name, any spirit that's there that wants to talk is going to come forward. It doesn't matter what their real name is. If they want to talk, they're going to come forward. And I've seen it many times in a location that this person never existed, but yet somehow, some way, a name has gotten attached to the location that by some random person. So it's interesting to see that. So, and we're at our first break. So everyone, you're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. Please enter your questions in either one of the chats, and I will make sure that your question gets answered, and we'll talk to you guys in just a little bit.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
To the believer, the evidence is overwhelming. To the skeptic, there will never be enough. Hello everyone. Join Kevin and Jennifer Malik, the host of Paraversal Universe, every Friday here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting. Also heard on WCET FM and The Rift. Log on or tune in as they check out the mysteries found within the 8 categories of the unknown and unexplained, including ghosts and haunted places, aliens and UFOs, theology and mythology, cryptids and monsters, urban legends and folklore, conspiracies, metaphysics, and forbidden archaeology. Listen as Kevin and Jennifer interview the top minds in their respective fields as they share theories and information regarding these unsolved mysteries. For future show and archive information, one can find Paraversal Universe on Facebook, Twitter, and MeWe under various Paraversal Universe headings. So, for excellent talk radio about the unknown and unexplained, check out Paraversal Universe, where all paranormal perspectives apply. Brought to you by the Northern Wisconsin Paranormal Society, Ltd., and produced by WBHM-DB.com.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour.
Okay, I'm back. Hello. Welcome back to the Paranormal Pride. I'm your host, Denise Pridemore. I'm hoping everybody's having a great night. My guest tonight is Richard Estep, and we have been talking about a lot of different things tonight already. And so we're going to go back to that. So I do have a question in the chat for you, and this is from Carl from CC Paranormal. And he asks, what type of equipment do you like best?
Hi, Carl. Thanks for asking that question, and thanks for being here and listening. So I'm a big fan of you don't need to buy all the gadgets, bells, and whistles to do a good investigation. In fact, sometimes I think too much equipment can actually detract from doing a good job. I'm a huge fan of 2 digital voice recorders, a flashlight, a notebook, a pen or pencil, and then some very basic equipment. So I know EMF meters seems like everybody has one. If you're going to invest in one of those, I like a tri-field rather than a K2. which is something that's at least useful, And again, I use EMF meters primarily as a rule out. A good thermometer is a must. A piece of paper for checking on drafts. A leveler, a spirit leveler, as we call them in the UK, for checking to see if the floors are level. Lots of tape so that you can tape up doorways and window frames to exclude drafts, and make sure also that you don't have any human intruders. If somebody sneaks into your location and breaks the tape, you'll know that you're being messed around with. And that is the base that's in my kit. And I always like to remind people that the original paranormal investigators, the great Victorians like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle and Sir Oliver Lodge, they did not have the gadgets that you'll see on every TV show. And I think it's very easy to get lazy, and it's very easy to get complacent when you just set out all these boxes that, all the bells and whistles that cost you a mortgage payment to put in your kit bag. They're nice to have, but a good basic kit should cost you less than $150 to $200.
Right. And a lot of the things that Sir Conan Doyle, if you guys don't know, that's the guy who wrote the books about, brain fart now. Okay. Why am I'm having a brain fart? Oh, shoot. What was the books he wrote? Sherlock Holmes. He wrote the Sherlock Holmes books. And a lot of the things that they used was simple talcum powder or flour, sugar, something that was handy in the house at the time to see if a spirit moved something. They would do table tipping and, spirit. I don't know if they used like a Ouija board and a glass. I've seen that too in some of the older things, but I don't know. But I do know, I knew that Sir Conan Doyle was a big believer in spirits, but one of his best friends, Harry Houdini, was not.
Yeah, that caused a rift between the two of them. And it has to be said that Conan Doyle, a very smart man, but he was a little too credulous at times. The case of the Cottingley Fairies shows that all too well. He was taken in by two schoolgirls with magazine cutouts. But he was a big believer in spiritualism and a big advocate for research into the paranormal. But men like Sir William Crook, Sir Oliver Lodge, they were pure scientists, which Conan Doyle wasn't. And they applied the scientific method to investigating claims of apparitions and hauntings with some very extraordinary results.
I did some research on him a long time ago. I'm going to say back in high school. And I didn't even stay in high school for very long. But I remember doing some research on Sir Conan Doyle. And that's when the Harry Houdini thing came up. So, it's not like this is new news. It's, this is something that I've known for a long time. And I thought it was strange that in the end, Harry Houdini was actually being turned around to believe more on the spiritual side.
I have not heard that being the case. In fact, Houdini left his secret question when he died. He left that question and answer, which he set up with his wife, so that any communicator would be able to prove they were communicating with Houdini, and that question was never answered.
It was something that they found written in some memoir somewhere. Like I said, this was way back in 1980 that I did this research, and I cannot tell you what it was now, because like I said, 1980, that's 40 years ago, when you think about that. And I did not keep all that crap from moving around. So, but there was something that I had put in this that I had found, and I had to quote it. So, like I said, it stuck with me, but I don't know where it came from now, So if it's true, great. But maybe he didn't haunt anything. Maybe he passed over. Maybe he didn't want to come back and talk to people. But who knows? So, and it's just always interesting though, because we had Abraham Lincoln that was big into the spiritual movement, and we had all kinds of stuff attributed to him as far as paranormal type activity goes. Have you ever investigated anything Abraham Lincoln related?
Actually, yes. I would give my right arm to investigate the White House, but when I was doing the Gacy case in Illinois, we were staying in Springfield. Mm-hmm. So although I wouldn't call it an investigation, I was fortunate enough to visit the tomb of Lincoln. Mm-hmm. I'm a big admirer of his and a big buff of all things Lincoln. I've read everything I could about the man. And his tomb, it turns out, once Lincoln was interred, was said to be haunted. They reported footsteps, mysterious figures, those kind of things, all around while they were constructing Abe Lincoln's tomb. Things I gather are a lot quieter now, but I mean, a bunch of men tried to steal his human remains at one point.
Yeah.
And went to jail for it, but that's why they encased him in an iron cage with a cement border around it.
That's funny that you should say that, because Ron and I are volunteers at a haunted location in Alton, Illinois. We live in Kansas, yes, I know, but in Alton, Illinois.
I'll be there in 2 months.
Oh, really? For
Troy Taylor's convention.
Okay, well then you will probably see this location.
And I'll be spending a week then researching Ashmore Estates.
Well, so while you're at Troy Taylor's thing in Alton, Illinois, one of the places that they go is McPike Mansion.
Oh, I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yes, I'm one of the volunteers for there, and so Henry McPike was actually with Abraham Lincoln when he won the presidency the second time.
Oh, I did not know that.
And they was with him and another friend was there with them in Springfield, Illinois, when they got word, and they said that Abraham Lincoln was very solemn as he walked down the stairs. As they run down the stairs, hooping and hollering and excited into the streets, he walks down the stairs very calmly, Lincoln does, and says, "I have to go tell Mother." And this is all written in a telegram that Henry McPike sent home to his family. Mm-hmm. But he was also Abraham Lincoln. The Lincoln-Douglas debates were brought to Alton, Illinois by Henry McPike. He was one of the people that helped bring them there. Mm-hmm. So there you go. It's going to be right down the street from where you're at. And they're at Mineral Springs, because is he doing this stuff at Mineral Springs this year, or is he doing it at the Best Western Hotel?
I have to check and see. Right now, I don't know. I just agreed that I would speak because I'll be in the vicinity, and I'll be doing a charity event with Robin at the Art Theatre also to raise money for the Lost Limbs Foundation, so people will get a chance to investigate the Gacy location for themselves. But last year I spoke there and had a great time at the Mineral Springs Hotel. Mm-hmm. That we had something very odd happen to us when we were investigating there, which impressed me enormously. So,
well, we investigated there the first Haunted Road Media Paracon, which was going to be 3 years ago this June. And after that, I got sick, not because of there, but because of a location that I've been at for years. I ended up high mold content ended up getting in my lungs. And so I can't go in any place that's very moldy without a respirator, which nowadays we all should have one. But
you should.
Yeah. But no, I can't go down in there and in the basement anymore. So I have to wait until I get a good respirator. And but it was after we went to Ashmore Estates that I actually ended up in the hospital. It was like a month later.
Oh.
But
I'm sorry to hear
that. But like I said, it's not. They said it was long-term mold exposure. I was only in there 2 hours. So it's not Ashmore Estates.
That's good, because I'll be moving in for a week. So,
well, you'll be sleeping in one of the houses outside, right?
Yes.
Yeah, at least they're air conditioned. Mm-hmm. So, and so you're doing that in June, right?
Yeah, it should be end of June. Will
the state of Illinois be reopened by then?
If it isn't, then I'll be staying home. I mean, it's that I don't know about you. Actually, I kind of do, because it's true for all of us, isn't it? But pretty much all of our plans for 2020 are up in the air.
Yes, they are, because they changed Haunted Road Media to September,
Mm-hmm.
and it was supposed to be the 12th and 13th of June, which is my birthday weekend. And so, I mean, I was looking forward to being out there for that, to help out at McPike, because they have a tour on Flag Day.
Right.
So there's that. And then I know that a week or 2 weeks later is when Troy Taylor's event is. And to be honest, Troy Taylor's book was the very first book I ever bought. On Haunted Alton was the first haunted book I ever bought. Before that, it was all library books, whatever I could get, quickly and give back. But his book on Haunted Alton was the first one I ever bought. And I have 3 different versions of it now, 3 different editions.
Yeah.
And because it changes. I mean,
right.
I know you can't believe that. So one of the things that we did, you brought back up Gacy. There was a question in the chat room. Was Gacy's ghost ever seen as a clown?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I answered that in the chat room. But for everyone that's listening, Gacy's ghost was primarily seen as just plain old John Gacy in civilian attire. Initially, this shouldn't be funny because stuff connected with serial killers shouldn't be funny. But when the owner, Robin, initially started to have strange things happen, he brought in some mediums, and one of them said, so this place, which is an old movie theater, it's haunted, and I'm getting the name John Wayne. And his first reaction is, how cool is that the Duke himself is haunting my movie theater, And then they start to dig a little deeper. It's like, it's not John Wayne, it's John Wayne Gacy.
Yeah. Isn't it strange how serial killers go by 3 names? Some
of them do, don't they? Yeah, absolutely true.
At least in the United States, the bulk of them, they give them their whole name. And I sit there and I look at that and go, well, you're glorifying it more by expounding upon that. But again, I guess you don't usually have people named with the same first name and last name, or first, middle, and last names, Yeah. Unless they got very, very common names. I mean, my maiden name was Myers. Okay. That's very common. It's generic, basically. So we had to give my mom had to give me a weird first name.
Wasn't Michael, was it?
No, thank God. Actually, we did tease that we were going to name our first kid Jason Michael Myers Pridemore. just to be weird. But no, my first name is Lula. So unusual in this day and age. There's very few people with my name, even as Myers. The only other person who had it was my grandmother. So, but yeah, when you think about that, but I know how it is weird to make light of serial killer things, even though my grandfather was. He was a serial killer. So I'm used to it, and I figure it made me stronger. I know it sounds weird, but it made me stronger. So, and I laugh about it a lot because otherwise I'd cry, and I don't want to do that.
Laughter is a coping mechanism for sure.
It is. So
Tom McNicholas is asking, did I see the old crypt of Lincoln behind the monument down the hill? I did go down there, Tom. The guides are very good. I stumbled on this entirely by chance. We just got into Springfield, and we were going to start our Gacy investigation the next day. And this is how much of an idiot I am sometimes. I'm so dumb, it's hard to credit. But as much as I've studied Lincoln and the Civil War and all those things, I did not make the connection in my brain because I was so focused on the investigation that we were going to do. I did not make the connection, even though we're driving through town and every other street, block, and store is the Lincoln something, Mm-hmm. And it's only when we sit down for dinner at the Cracker Barrel and my friend Jason's looking at the local, what's on. And he said, there's a Civil War reenactment going on tonight at 7. And I'm like, oh, where's that? And he said, Lincoln's tomb. And I spat Pepsi all over the table. I'm like, Abe Lincoln's tomb? Oh, God, we're in Springfield, aren't we? So we dashed over there and we watched them do an incredible changing of the guard ceremony, firing cannons, firing muskets, those kind of things. Very, very moving indeed. And I did get to go wander around and look at what you can see of the original spot where Lincoln was buried while they were constructing his tomb, and heard a few ghost stories.
I've only driven through Springfield Illinois. One day we'll maybe be able to go back there and check that out. My daughter, when she went up to Chicago for a wasted trip, and not that she was wasted. When they got up there, they couldn't park the car, and then they ended up missing the concert that they needed to go to. So it was, like I said, a wasted trip. But at least they did stop at the Lincoln Tomb and check that out. So I thought that was good that my daughter was interested enough to do that. So because Lincoln is a monumental figure, and there were you were talking about the White House. I've been there. I don't know how many times. I grew up in Baltimore, so every field trip, every time we turned around, we were going to Washington, D.C. And one time from New Jersey, we went on a field trip, and it was really kind of interesting because, here I am, I'm in the White House, I'm 7, 8 years old, and I see all these spirits. And of course, by this time, I already know not to say a word to anybody. You don't open your mouth. And back in 1970 something, I'm not going to say what year, but back in 1970 something, you didn't say that you saw spirits. You didn't say what you saw, but I saw. The only time I've ever seen a spirit with an actual top hat was there in the White House. I've seen spirits with hats, but never a top hat except for there. And I've seen that twice. Once when I was 7 or 8 years old, and another time when I was 12 years old. So it was interesting. I mean, if you ever get to even just go on a tour of the White House, I suggest you do it. I'll tell anybody that. You get to go on a tour of the White House, go. It's an amazing adventure. And, back then they had more rooms were vacant. So they would take you into all these rooms. I mean, it was a 2.5-hour tour the last time I went. And of course I was 12, so it's been a while. But it is an interesting place to go.
It's number one on my bucket list, with Alcatraz being close behind it.
The Smithsonian is also amazing.
I did the Smithsonian. I did Air and Space at the Smithsonian, and I wandered through. I was, again, talking about how dumb I am, which is becoming a theme of this interview. But, I was in Washington, D.C. I was taking a class, actually, and I had a day to just go be a tourist. And rather than, go see the sites, I wanted to see Arlington House in addition to the cemetery. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to see the Smithsonian, and I had no idea that you need at least a week to make a dent in the Smithsonian, Yes. So
they've added more buildings. Yep.
Right. Even then, this was 2001. So it was almost like a hit and run. And I turned a corner, not paying any attention to directions. I just wanted to see what I could find. And I turned, and they were restoring the actual Star-Spangled Banner right there in front of your eyes, behind a glass screen, of course. But, how cool is it that you can experience for yourself something that has such a profound place at the heart of our history and culture?
Well, yep, I know that. So we are at our second break. Everyone, if you're listening and you want to put in some questions into the chat rooms, please do that, and I will make sure they get asked and answered. But you're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. We'll be back in a couple minutes.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Welcome back to the Paranormal Pride. I'm your host, Denise Pridmore, and my guest tonight, Richard Estep, is a wealth of knowledge, and I'm hoping to drag some more stuff out of him. And it hasn't been hard, which is great. You were saying during the break that you basically took over Fort Mifflin for a week.
Yeah, Fort Mifflin is on the Delaware, and it's known as the fort that saved America because it held the Delaware along with another fort that was on the opposite side of the river, stopped the Royal Navy from moving freely up and down the Delaware and landing troops. Ultimately, the British bombarded the heck out of Fort Mifflin, killed a number of people, forced the defenders out, and took over ownership. But by that time, Fort Mifflin had already slowed down the British invasion. So they were kind enough, when I'd said I was interested in writing the haunted history of Fort Mifflin, to invite me to spend a week there. And the only bad thing about it was that if you go in the summer, as we did, to the coast, the coastal areas of Philadelphia, a lot of mosquitoes, so we were getting eaten alive by mosquitoes. But it was an amazing experience. They allowed me to fire the cannon out of Fort Mifflin. No cannonballs in it, just to be clear, because the shipping goes up and down past the fort all day and all night. And you're also on the main flight path to the airport there too. Mm-hmm. So, but firing the cannon and having muskets going off in the fort as we did a paranormal investigation was something I'll never forget. I got a red coat and a sash that I would wear. So you had an Englishman in a red coat, again, walking around Fort Mifflin, which it was quite the remarkable experience. And it made me very appreciative of the poor boys that died on both sides. Some of them very, very far from home, during the Revolutionary War. And it's an era of history that I would like to learn more about.
Williamsburg, Virginia. Check it out. That will give you a good history of both Revolutionary War as well as the war between the states, the Civil War.
I've heard that from a number of people that Colonial Williamsburg is the place to go. I'm actually going to be coming to Virginia, coronavirus, travel bans, and so forth, notwithstanding, later this year in November for the Sage Paracon, which is being held out there.
It is an amazing place. I stayed at the College of William and Mary for a week, way back when in 1998. And the cockroaches there were as big as my cats, but I'm not even kidding. But we had went to a local bar, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was a Revolutionary War bar at the time, that they've kept up. And I saw spirits in there, and it was like, well, until we get to drinking a little bit, I can't tell anybody about this. And since I was a woman traveling alone with younger college students, I figured I better not drink, because what if they did?
Yeah,
I was a grown up at the time. I already had 3 kids, and I was, staying at the college with a bunch of college kids. It's like, well, I better not drink. So it's an amazing place. I couldn't even tell you half the things I saw, and I was there a week. And not to mention the fact, like I said before, I'm from Baltimore, so we were down in that area quite often, Busch Gardens, and never went to Busch Gardens, but I did go to King's Dominion. And my sister lives in Virginia Beach, and my cousin, who's in the other chat, she lives in Virginia Beach for a little bit longer. So, like I said, I've been everywhere around the country, just about. But that was part of my life for a long time, was that part of the East Coast. So,
Well,
we do have another.
So I have family from McKeesport, so apparently that's where the Estep family kind of originated. So I'll be out there in a place called Belgrove Plantation.
That is a wonderful place.
Yeah.
So I think you'll like that. And let's see. The question in the chat room is from Gary from Caldwell County Paranormal. He asks, what do you think about dowsing rods?
So I have used dowsing rods before, Gary, on cases. I'm in two minds about them, and I should say that I'm in two minds about literally every technique we use to research, because you always have to be somewhat skeptical to a degree. I've seen them give very impressive answers. So, for example, I was part of a dowsing rod experiment in a prison in London called the Clink. It's London's oldest prison, and it really is where we derive the term the clink from. When we say, he or she was thrown in the clink, this is the prison that actually gave it its name, which I thought was a pretty cool story. And we had hidden, there were 25 people in the room. We had hidden a specific item on one of the people while an investigator was outside the room. And then the investigator came in with dowsing rods and started narrowing down which person had this object. And it was spookily accurate. I've seen, though, I know the argument is also made that dowsing rods sometimes work via psychomotor, muscular motion. Mm-hmm. So I think that happens too. So like any other tool that we use, I think they have their place and that they're a double-edged sword, Yeah,
I mean, I collect dowsing rods because they're fun.
Sure.
But 9 times out of 10, I already know the answer it's going to give me before it shows. So that's what's kind of strange. And that means either if I already know the answer, why do I even have them? So at this point in time, when I investigate, I hardly ever use any equipment anymore. It's more me talking, me speaking out and saying, this is what I'm hearing and this is what I'm seeing, and, writing it down, or whatever it is I need to do to get the point across. Do you have, well, I'm going to ask you Rhodey's question first. She asks, why did you say a double-edged sword?
I mean that they can sometimes give you very correct and accurate information, and they can sometimes give you either incorrect information or the correct information, but you're getting it from your own subconscious. So if you're asking a question that you subconsciously know the answer to, then you may get a correct answer, but it's not some external entity that's giving you that answer, if that makes sense. It's your own subconsciousness that's doing so.
Right. And then another question is from Wendy. She asks, are you related to Sarah Estep of EVP fame?
I get asked that question a lot. Sarah Estep's one of the reasons I've always found this research so interesting, but we are not related that I know of. She was one of the true pioneers, though, of EVP research, and I have a lot of respect for her and her work.
So you moved out in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
How did you pick Colorado?
Oh, because I had a job offer for a computer company, and also I was married to an American, and we looked at which country to settle in, and the U.S. was where we chose.
Well, I didn't question the U.S. part. I was just questioning the Colorado part.
Oh, gotcha. Well, it was either her part of the country or my part of my country, and so she was a Coloradan, and that's why Colorado, and it's gorgeous. It's a beautiful part of the country.
The only part I've actually been in that I know very well is Denver.
Oh yeah, I know Denver quite well. It's not that far from where I live, and it's a nice place.
I don't like I-70 in Colorado, especially after Denver. Before Denver, it's fine. It's boring and quiet to around after Lyman. It's really, really boring. After you go past, once you start going up, coming down sucks. I mean,
Yes, it does.
Knowing that's the highest part of I-70, the highest part of any interstate system in the United States is right there where that comes out. We came up that way. We're going to Vegas, and it was in April, and it was 70 degrees on one side of the mountain. We come out of the tunnel, and it's sleeting. I was not a happy camper, especially coming down in the sleet. I was not happy. And then, of course, now that's, it's also the most dangerous highway in most of the United States as well, especially when it's snowing. But it is beautiful when you're driving through Breckenridge and Vale and all that and seeing all of it. It's beautiful. Deer everywhere. So, like I said, I agree. It is beautiful. Scary when you're riding in the car. I upset Ron by saying my brake didn't work on my side of the car. So I couldn't stop the car with my own, as a passenger. So, but I did find some really great ice cream places in Colorado.
It's a pretty great state. I love the place. I love the people. The weather is so temperamental. All 4 seasons in one day. Mm-hmm. You never quite know what you're going to get.
Oh, yeah. I had one day there that it snowed all day long, and we still had the same 8 inches of snow on the ground that night as we did that morning because, the snow comes down and it starts to evaporate as it's coming down. Mm. And it's just so weird. I've just never seen anything like that before. And that was in April, and you guys get more in February and March than you do all year long. So it's kind of weird. But like I said, I've got some good memories of there. Have you checked out any of the haunted downtown Denver stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote a book about the haunted botanic gardens in Denver called The Dead Below. They allowed me to investigate there for several nights. The Denver Botanic Gardens are built on the old cemetery.
Mm-hmm. Cheeseman Park, right?
Mm-hmm. Cheeseman Park also, is built on the old cemetery, and there are several thousand sets of human remains underneath that park still to this day.
I guess don't take your cadaver dog for a walk. You're never going to get anywhere.
I think they're all pretty much just bones right now, but whenever they work on digging up the utilities in Cheeseman Park or the Botanic Gardens, when they broke ground on the new parking structure, they found a lot of skulls and bones and things of that nature. And as I was investigating in the basement and asked where we were, I got a very clear EVP that said in a mass grave.
Cheeseman Park is beautiful. And, I know that it's on the list of most haunted parks in the United States. Mm-hmm. And there are some really great places downtown. The Molly Brown House, it's an unusual looking house, Art Deco style, really pretty. There's just not many historic sites left in downtown Denver. Then you've got my favorite place was the red brick building of the Coke Patterson house.
Croke Patterson Mansion?
Yeah, Croke Patterson.
Yeah, which I believe is going to be on Portals to Hell this season. I know that they were just recently in Denver investigating there. Croke Patterson's kind of interesting. It's now a boarding house, a bed and breakfast.
Right. And they were in the process of doing that when I went on my tour. I had a solitary walking tour. It was me and the tour guide. Uh-huh. It's supposed to be an 1.5-hour tour, and it ended up being 2.5 hours. So he took me there, and we looked at it, and I mean the stories were amazing about the place, and it's also related to the bodies in Cheeseman Park.
Yeah, it seems like all of Denver is interconnected in that way, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And the Peabody Mansion is not far from there as well. And it was an amazing stop. We didn't get to go into any of the places, but we were able to go up on the porches, because they okayed to be able to go up on the porches of these locations. So, but they were doing construction on the Croke Patterson when I was there. So it was just very neat. There's one tour that I'd like to take my husband on because he hasn't gotten to go on that. So, and the prices for the bed and breakfast there a little bit high for when I'm driving through town.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. if I'm gonna stay by the highway if I'm just driving through. But that's how we all do it, though. And we're in a hurry to get to our vacation spot, not always wanting to go off the beaten path to get there. So, hey everybody, we're at our top of the hour break. You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. We'll be back after the news break.
Live from NPR News, I'm Jack Speer. The White House is raising questions about a New York Times story of far more dire warnings than previously heard out of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. As NPR's Mara Liasson explains, the CDC document projects a doubling of daily deaths from COVID-19.
The document from the Centers for Disease Control said daily deaths from the virus will reach about 3,000 by June 1st. That's almost double the current amount of 1,750 a day. But White House spokesman Judd Deere rejected the CDC data, saying it had not been presented to the coronavirus task force. On Sunday, in a virtual town hall on Fox News, President Trump raised his estimate for virus deaths to about 100,000 total. Just a few weeks ago, he said he was expecting 50 to 60,000 casualties. According to the CDC projection, there will be 200,000 new cases each day by the end of this month. That's up from the current daily rate of about 25,000 new cases. And that suggests while the pandemic may be stabilizing in some areas, it is not abating overall. Mara Liasson, NPR News.
The Senate reopened today in a Capitol that remains largely shut down due to the coronavirus pandemic. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell defended the reopening, saying it's time to begin conducting the nation's business in ways that are only possible with senators here in the nation's capital. But Illinois Democrat Dick Durbin clearly was not pleased with McConnell's decision to call lawmakers back.
The Senate is here today because the Majority Leader has brought us back to Washington against medical advice. We know what the standard is in the District of Columbia for the people who live here. Stay home, don't meet in groups, work away from your normal working place to protect yourself, your family, and everyone else. But we're back in town.
As for prospects for quick action on a new coronavirus aid package, Senate Republicans have expressed reluctance to spend more money on pandemic relief. The much larger House has so far declined to return to Washington. European Union is calling for a coalition to fight the coronavirus pandemic. As NPR's Jason Beaubien reports, the EU is trying to raise 7.5 billion euros to develop new vaccines, drugs, and diagnostic tests for COVID-19.
In a live-stream pledging conference on Monday, the EU secured financial commitments not just from European countries, but also from Canada, South Korea, Australia, Kuwait, and China, among others. The Prime Minister of Denmark, Mette Frederiksen, called for a unified strategic approach to developing a vaccine.
No country, no company, and no organization can win this battle alone. We have to team up, share our knowledge and solutions.
The EU also insists that any eventual vaccine must be shared globally. The United States is not participating in the initiative. A State Department official says the U.S. already contributes to global health efforts through other channels. Jason Beaubien, NPR News.
You're listening to NPR. Canada's largest airline has announced a more than $1 billion loss and also says it will put in place mandatory temperature checks for customers amid the ongoing coronavirus pandemic. Since mid-March, Air Canada slashed its flight schedule by more than 90% and grounded roughly 200 of its planes. Air Canada says it lost the equivalent of $748 million in the first quarter alone. Pro Football Hall of Fame coach Don Shula has died. NPR's Greg Allen reports on Shula's legendary career, which includes more wins than any other coach in NFL history.
In his 7 years coaching the Baltimore Colts and then 26 years with the Miami Dolphins, Don Shula had 347 wins, a record unlikely to be equaled. He took his teams to the Super Bowl 6 times, winning twice after the 1972 and 73 seasons. The 1972 Dolphins team won every game, recording a perfect season, something not done before or since by any other NFL team. In the 1980s, Shula took the Dolphins back to the Super Bowl twice, the second time with Hall of Fame quarterback Dan Marino. Shula counted not winning a Super Bowl with Marino as one of the few regrets in his 44-year career, first as a player and then as the winningest coach in NFL history. Greg Allen, NPR News.
Cruise ships were one of the earliest places where the coronavirus outbreak showed up, and now one of the major operators is announcing plans to begin sailing again to limited destinations in August. Cruise ship operator Carnival said they'll begin offering limited cruises from Florida and Texas to destinations in the Caribbean. On Wall Street, the Dow closed up 26 points. I'm Jack Speer, NPR News.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Welcome back to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 5 minutes after the hour.
Welcome back to the Paranormal Pride. I'm your host, Denise Pridemore. My guest tonight is Richard Estep. At least I hope he's still here. He's been awful quiet. So
I'm still here.
I'm grateful. There have been times where I've thought I've actually lost my guest. But, we have that happen every once in a while. And April has a question in the other chat. She asks, is it possible to have your own personal loved ones visit during and communicate with you on an investigation?
I believe that it is entirely possible. Again, believe is the key word, so this is just my opinion and experience, but I do believe that they keep an eye on us and help keep us protected from some of the more harmful consequences of investigating. But I also add the caveat that there have been some instances I've come to believe that something was masquerading or pretending to be a loved one and wasn't actually them. So you have to be very careful in those cases.
Right, because even in your own home, you can have spirits come visit that act like your family members and not be. So, but, my mom, she did not believe in a lot of this stuff before she passed. And she passed in 2000 or 2017, and I was on TV for Ghosts back in 2015, and that's when she started actually believing what I was saying again about ghosts. And she gave me a code word so that I would know if it's her that's communicating with me. So, and I've never told anybody what that code word is, but I know for sure that it's her when that word comes out. So that's how I know if it's my mom. Do I know if it's anybody else? No. But with her, I know for sure it's her, unless a spirit overheard her tell me what word it was going to be. And then I'm not positive. Makes you wonder when you think about it. Sometimes logic always gets in the way of some of the things. So here in the United States, you've been here a while, and you have all these places that you've been allowed to stay in for multiple days. Is there any location anywhere in the world that you've investigated that you wouldn't go back to?
Not really. I don't think so. Some places I've been to where nothing happened, but again, you and I talked about this, Denise. Just because a place isn't active when you visit doesn't mean it isn't haunted. So I think being patient. I'm fortunate enough that I go to places with a great deal of history, a great deal of character. So even if nothing paranormal happens at all, it's still a privilege and a fascinating thing to be allowed to go walk those hallways. So no, not really.
So the other side of that would be, what location do you want to go to that you haven't been to?
I've got a few on my bucket list. We mentioned number 1 is the White House, and number 2 would be Alcatraz. Mm-hmm. Let's see. I know that there are a number of historic places. I like to do Salem. My good friend Rebecca Pittman wrote about the haunting of Salem. My friend Sam Baltrusis did also. There's a lot of haunted history in Salem, and I already wrote a book about the British witchcraft trials and the haunting that relates to those. a book called Spirits of the Cage, where I spent a week in a witches' prison in England with a Catholic priest and 2 paranormal investigators, which sounds like the setup for a great joke.
Oh, yeah, it does.
But yeah, I'd like to do Salem, Massachusetts. I think that's going to be on my bucket list. I'd like to do Sleepy Hollow as well, and places of that nature. But also, I've so many Civil War battlefields to visit. Having been to Gettysburg, written a couple of books about that, and just recently visited Tennessee and Chickamauga battlefield. And one of my favorite haunted locations is down there, Old South Pittsburgh Hospital.
That's one of Kat's favorites.
Yeah, the people there are wonderful. So are the ghosts, and I can't wait to go back. And while I was there, I visited the Chickamauga battlefield and would like to visit the Stones River field. And that whole part of the country is so rich in history, and the people are so friendly.
Yep, they are. In fact, that's one of the areas that we're looking at possible retirement is mostly between Knoxville and Gatlinburg. But I have family in back to family. I have family in Bristol, so we're not set yet on one location. We're looking in Florida, we're looking in Tennessee, and because there's so many great places in Tennessee to go to, it's hard to pick which one. Do I want the beach, or do I want to have, do I want it to rain on me on every Civil War battlefield that I go to?
Decisions.
Well, every time we go to a Civil War battlefield, every time, without fail, it rains. So we know that if we go, we have to bring raincoat and all this other stuff. So it's just we went to Gettysburg a few years ago, back in 2017. Yeah, it was in 2017. We went. Rained the whole time we were there, and we leave town and it's all bright and sunny. I was like, shoot. But I mean, I had been there back in 77 when I was 12. I went to Gettysburg, and I had told Ron, I said I had paranormal experience there then. And of course, like I said, those school field trips were great back in the day. Living in that part of the country, you got to go to so many places just spur of the moment. You got this field trip, jump on a bus, go. And we did. And but Gettysburg was so different from the difference between what it was in 1977 and what it was in 2017. It was a totally different place. Even though the battlefields were the same, the town was the same, the people were so different.
Yeah, and one of the things I know that has changed in Gettysburg, which is one of my favorite places on earth, I know that many of those that live and certainly work there, they're not a big fan of the ghost connection. They're not a big fan of the ghost tours and that aspect of Gettysburg, which I think is a shame. It's a beautiful part of the country. It has to be experienced to be believed, and it's my firm belief that if I had my way, every American should visit Gettysburg at least once in their lifetime to experience it for themselves and to learn about why it was such an important place and clash of armies.
I think their Antietam would be a wonderful place to go. Any one of the major battlefields would be an experience for anybody, especially if they have the right information with them at the time, especially from the parks. The parks do a good job of putting all that information, both sides, together, and you can go around with that information in your hands. We've got some little bitty battlefields right here by us. We have one called Island Mound. And it's just across the border on the Missouri side. And it was one of the first African-American regiments to fight. And they fought against, it was a Union against the, so these African-Americans were on the Union side. And
was this the 54th Massachusetts?
No, this was, it would have been in Missouri. It would have been a Missouri brigade, And like I said, it's just amazing. It has all these little things all around the field, just like they do at Gettysburg, but it's such a smaller one that you can walk right through the whole field in, half an hour. We'll stop on our way home from someplace, usually from Springfield, Missouri. We'll just stop and take a walk around it. And it's nice. We have another one, Mine Creek, down the road, and then the Meredith Massacre site, which was before the Civil War, but was one of the catalysts to kind of push everybody into war. Because, we were here for the Bleeding Kansas battle, the battle of the battle between Missouri and Kansas, which was really,
wars,
it was huge. Quantrill's Raiders, John Brown, so we have all that all over the place where we live, because we live like 5 miles from Missouri. So it's all throughout here. So it's amazing when you just drive down the road and you go, there's a battlefield, and there's a battlefield, and there's one. But every time, like I said, every time we get out of the car, it rains on us. So we've pretty much given up on that. But and one of the places we went, we got attacked by mosquitoes, just like you did in Delaware at Fort Mifflin. So it is what it is, but it's interesting when, because they only went so far with the battles. They didn't go that far into Kansas. So we're like on the edge of the Civil War frontier here. So there's only so many places that they went. I think as far as they went was, the Lawrence, Kansas, maybe a little bit further. So it's weird when you think about that, when you've got states east of us that had battles all through them. So it's interesting. We have one battlefield, the Battle of Carthage, is just down, it's about an hour and a half, 2 hours away. And that battle was huge. And, the town still talks about the battle, about the buildings that are still standing. It's one of those things that you go, wow, they really are embracing a lot of this history. But, a lot of people think that Civil War history is mostly way east of here.
I think that, that's a common, I have to call it what it is. It's a bias that, and I was certainly guilty of this initially. So much publicity is given to the Eastern theater of the war. And I was woefully ignorant of what happened in areas like Tennessee until I went out of my way and not only visited some of those places, but did some more in-depth reading. So, yeah, you hear all about Gettysburg and Antietam and Chancellorsville and battles like that. But, there was an equal amount of fascination to be found when you look at things coming a little bit further south and west. So those battlefields as well are beautifully taken care of. Again, Chickamauga is the only one that I can really speak of personal experience, but it's a lovely place to visit and pay your respects. It's so well preserved.
I plan on checking that out the next time we go down through that area. We went down through there last October, I believe it was, when we came down to see Kat in Birmingham. So we didn't stop a lot because I'd given myself a concussion the night before at McPike Mansion. Whole different problem. I get really involved in stuff and forget that things are there, and ran right into a big metal door. So,
oh dear.
Yeah, I've been volunteering there since 2009. You would think that I would know that door was there, but no, I ran right into it and almost canceled our vacation because of it. That's how bad it was.
Oh boy.
But no, I was a trooper. We went on anyway. So, is there any, you've been talking about these events that you're hoping, knock on wood, you get to do with the, in spite of the coronavirus. Oh, that's right. I have a question for you, and I better ask it while I remember it. Rhodey asks a question. She goes, Is Richard still a paramedic, and did he ever experience anything paranormal on any of his calls?
Hi, Rhodey. Thanks for asking. Yeah, I am still a paramedic. I've been in emergency medicine since 2002, and still I'm a paramedic and a clinical chief in Boulder, Colorado. So I don't spend as much time out in an ambulance as I would like, but I still do that, in addition to training paramedic EMS crews and chief level functions. Basically, pen pushing is a large part of my job, but I still get to treat patients whenever I can, and it's very rewarding. I have not experienced anything paranormal on a call, and my theory behind that is I'm usually so focused on my patient and on the situation itself that I think a parade of headless horsemen could go by and I might not notice. The paramedic's job is to keep that patient alive until we get them to the hospital, and that's where my focus is. But I'm one of the commentators on Paranormal 911, and there are plenty of stories of EMS crews that do encounter strange things on duty. The closest thing I have happened to me back in, it would be now about 15 years ago. I was on duty at the firehouse. I was also a firefighter before I was a paramedic. I did 15 years as a volunteer firefighter in Boulder, and was woken one morning feeling something tapping on my head, like very distinctly somebody tapping on my head to wake me up. I woke up, thought that I'd slept through shift changeover, but it was still dark outside, and it kind of creeped me out a little bit, but I was able to go back to sleep. And then when I went home, I found out that a member of my family had died that morning at about the same time I'd been woken up.
That doesn't surprise me at all. Some of the earliest paranormal things that I had, well, you know what? We're going to have to go to break. Everybody, you're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. We'll be back in a couple minutes.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Several U.S. presidents are on record talking about the UFO mystery.
Yeah, Presidents Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan both had UFO sightings of their own, but the current presidential campaign might be the first in which UFO disclosure has been championed by a major party candidate.
DIA, CIA, it moves around, is operating a program to train psychic spies to spy and use their powers against Russia. John Ronson writes about this in The Men Who Stare at Goats.
The first known sighting of a ghost took place right after Abraham Lincoln was assassinated in the late 1860s during the administration of Ulysses Grant.
Project Paperclip, Clinton releases it all in 1998.
Possibly the unequal cooling of its surface.
I say, do you still think it's a meteor, Professor?
I don't know what to think. The metal casing is definitely extraterrestrial.
It's a place where UFO hunters and scientists gather to examine paranormal activity in the region.
Some of the documents, this is bringing Nazi scientists into the United States to work here. So we fought against the Nazis, and it's not, this again is not a revelation. As early as 1947, 1946, we knew some of this, right?
On the paranormal, will we see U.S. President Barack Obama's foreign policy go intergalactic in a quest for gold stolen by aliens? We'll tell you at least how the White House responded to claims the chief executive has been teleporting to Mars. But let's get to today's Capitol account.
UFOs, hauntings, psychic abilities, conspiracy, ESP, cryptozoology. There are many things that remain unexplained in the inexplicable world around us, and we're talking about them here, looking for answers on WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama. The truth is out there.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 23 minutes after the hour.
Welcome back to the Paranormal Pride. I'm your host, Denise Pridemore, and my guest tonight is Richard Estep, and we've been learning a lot from him, and I hope you guys are enjoying this. And if you do have any questions or comments, please put them in the chat room, and if you want me to relay them, please let me know. But I do have a relay from my cousin April. She says when her grandfather died, a lamp was knocked over in her living room, kind of to let her know that he had passed. April has some paranormal experiences quite often, and I'm beginning to wonder if it's a family thing. You know, that we're, you know, since we're part of the same family, maybe she inherited it, and maybe it wasn't just from my mother's side of the family. Maybe it was from my father's side of the family as well. So it's always interesting to hear other people's stories. But when we left, we were talking about those types of things where you said you got touched and a family member had passed. My earlier memories were of premonitions of family members passing, and, you know, telling people, hey, this has happened, and they didn't want to believe me. And then we'd get the phone call, and that's what it was. Out of body experiences. Have you ever had an out of body experience?
No, I have not.
See, that was one of the things for me, is it would be out of body. And so that's a long story, and everybody here's heard it, so I'm not going to tell you. If you want to hear it, you can ask me later. But has there been one paranormal experience that you've had that made you think you might want to get out of doing paranormal investigations?
Not really, but I would say the most unpleasant one was a series of experiences that happened when, this would be 3 years ago, when I seemed to bring some kind of attachment home. And it was a year when I'd gone to a lot of very well-known for being negative locations. So I'd been to places like Bobby Mackey's Music World in Wilder, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to Waverly Hills. I've been to Asylum 49 and places like that. And was getting on towards the holidays, and we know that paranormal activity generally picks up around the holidays, but it's usually the pleasant kind, at least in my experience. Seems to be family members dropping by to keep an eye on us and remind us that they're still close to us. But this was we sort of started seeing a shadowy figure in the house, and we would hear a woman's voice speaking when the house was empty, and my dog would go bananas and go chasing after it as if it was an intruder. And of course, there was never anybody physically there. And then we had framed pictures started falling from the mantelpiece onto the carpet. And they nearly landed on my cat, who was sleeping in front of the fire. And that was kind of the last resort. And then finally, I saw this shadow figure walk past my front door. And I decided enough was enough. So I called my friend Stephen, who is a Catholic priest in addition to being a paranormal investigator, and he offered to come and bless the house, which I personally am a spiritual person, but I don't adhere to any conventional faith. So I'm not a Christian, or a Buddhist or anything of that nature. I just consider myself to be a spiritual agnostic, if you will, open to being convinced. And I said, I appreciate the offer, but is this going to work? Because I don't believe in the things that you believe in. And he said, well, you just have to think about, do they believe in you? And so he came by and spent about 90 minutes. He was anointing every door frame and every window with a cross made in holy water, and conducted basically a ceremony of blessing. And after that, everything stopped, as if a switch had been flipped, and the figures stopped troubling us at home. But I think that I always like to tell this story because for many years I was arrogant enough to scoff at the idea of spiritual protection. I'd gone to so many haunted places on 2 continents, never had anything happen. And so when I would see people with their own little rituals, or their own energy light work, or their crystals, or whatever they wanted to use, I would always kind of roll my eyes. And boy, did I get humbled by having to reach out for help. So I always like to tell people, keep an open mind and be humble, because the more you do this, the more of an interest you take in the paranormal, it's going to take an interest in you.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Do you believe, not do you believe, have you ever had any interactions with demons?
So I'm not a big fan of the term demon, honestly. I think it's a loaded term. Mm-hmm. I think it implies a very specific faith-based belief. But I do believe in the possibility that there are non-human entities out there that have not walked the earth in human form. You say demon, you think evil, right? Demon, demonic, those kind of things. And that may or may not be the case, but the analogy I've always liked to use is if you think about something like a great white shark or a tiger, these things are apex predators, they are not something you want to get in front of. And they cause havoc, they cause destruction, they cause great harm. But are they evil? Or are they simply a part of nature that is, or can be very destructive, if you see what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I definitely am open to the possibility of non-human entities. I do avoid the D word. And I'll also say this as well, not trying to disrespect anybody's belief system that is an advocate for demons and the demonic, but I think that word itself has been done to death by certain TV shows, which just abuse it every week. There are certain individuals in TV that I won't go down that road, but
they know, everybody knows who it is.
Everything is demonic, and it goes back too. I mean, it's not restricted to TV. I've seen certain other media personalities do this in the past as well, and they'll find demons everywhere they go. And
they should be looking within to see where they're coming from. That's my thought. What are you bringing with you to those locations if it's happening at every location, if it's truly happening?
That's a good point. And I will say that when I started investigating seriously, it was 1995. And it was before the TV explosion of ghost shows, which I am a part of. Mm-hmm. But we did not see the number of reportedly dark, negative, demonic cases that you hear about today. Mm-hmm. And then TV happened, and we started, the TV companies started seeing that, hey, it was a demonic case this week, and the ratings went through the roof. Mm-hmm. So if we had more of these quote-unquote demonic cases, we'll get better ratings, right?
That's the thought.
And then all of a sudden, you literally can't throw a rock in TV land without it being a dark and demonic haunting. And frankly, I'm sick of it. If every one of these cases truly was dark and demonic, it would be pandemonium out there.
It would be. And we would need priests or ministers at every paranormal investigation going forward. Mm-hmm. Everybody would have to have a trained demonologist, no matter what, if that was the case. And I would be wondering what the state of the world is, to be honest, because I've had people on the show that have said, "Oh, I only deal with demonic cases." I said, "Well, then you probably must be sitting at home, because not everything is that bad. It's not all demonic." And I'm just glad to hear you say that. I truly am.
It's something that I think we all need to be aware of.
Most everybody in my chat room is. That's the good thing. Everybody in my chat room knows, that not every case is demonic. Is there some that could be? Yes, there could be, because we do. Gary is a minister, and he has witnessed a demonic possession, and that's from a minister, so I trust him. But no, I roll my eyes every time I hear the D word, and kind of go, okay, well, I'm looking at who said it and going, okay, whatever.
Well, and I think it disrespects those genuine cases. when we see so many frivolous uses of the term.
So, but yeah, I do think that that some of the shows make mountains out of molehills.
Mm-hmm.
So, when does your show start? The Paranormal Night Shift.
Paranormal 911 is currently running on Saturday nights. Night Shift, we wrapped on, or at least I wrapped on my portion of it earlier this year, so it will be sometime over the next few months. I'm not sure what the coronavirus situation has done to production of that show, because it's going to be in the vein of Haunted Hospitals and Paranormal 911, where they are case testimonies and then reenactments. So shooting the reenactments, getting that finished, I think will be the determinant on when the show airs, but it should come this year.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to Photoshop everybody together.
Right. It's a real challenge, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. And if it's going to mess up my show Supernatural, it's messing up everything, you know. And this is their final season, so you know, it's sad.
It beat James Bond, right? James Bond is back 6 months because of the coronavirus, and there's nothing can defeat James Bond.
Except for apparently the coronavirus.
Yeah.
Social distancing has killed some things. Just not exactly sure which things are going to come back. When are they reopening Colorado?
So that's a great question. They're doing it in phases. So we're seeing an order from the governor that everybody needs to be wearing face masks if they're not able to socially distance. Businesses are going to be able to open with caution beginning this week. And I asked for when it will fully reopen. Nobody knows. No. We're waiting for the next wave, you know, the second wave. Once we start to relax some of these rules, it's inevitable that we'll see a spike in infection. So it's impossible to tell.
Yeah, they reopened part of Kansas today. So, but, you know, we've also got Kansas City, Missouri in there because that's not too far from us. And they haven't reopened the metropolitan area at all. But like I said, I live rurally. I'm largely unaffected. Our county is largely unaffected. Even though the county north of us is the fourth highest in the state of Kansas, we've got 5 total cases and 3 have already healed. So when you think about it from that standpoint, again, I'm still largely unaffected, even though I do shop in that county, one county north, that's got a bunch of the cases. I'm still not affected in any way. I'm affected with the frustration part of going shopping and not finding meat. That is irritating. I'm not going to become a vegetarian because of the coronavirus. I'm sorry. I cannot grill my vegetables. So it will be what it will be. And but I refuse to hoard anything. The only thing I've hoarded has been the baby's drinks because we got to make sure the baby's taken care of. That's the only thing I've hoarded this whole time. Oh, and cat food. I had to hoard cat food. We got 5 cats. You have pets too, right?
I do. I have 3 black cats and a dog.
And the cats run everybody, right?
Oh, they're the bosses of this household, sure enough.
Oh, yeah. Our 5 are too. So we have a particular love of black cats, although we have none right now. So let's see. There's got to be another question in me. I know there is. Earlier, before we started the show, you were talking about the asylum in Utah. What about that draws you to that location?
You know, the answer for that is probably not going to be the one you expect. I first learned about Asylum 49, which is in Tooele, Utah. 4 years ago, I was researching a book called The World's Most Haunted Hospitals, and I covered some of just as the title says, most haunted hospitals in the world. But there was no way I could visit them all in person. You know, I couldn't fly to Singapore and Manila and places like that. But I was able to visit this one in Utah. And what fascinated me about it was that it was a working hospital until about 2004 2004, 2005. And it closed its doors for the last time, and it was sold into private hands, and so became a full contact Halloween haunted house attraction. The kind of place where you go in and you sign a contract, and they will drag you into coffins and give you the hands-on treatment. It's terrifying stuff. And I'd heard that it was actually haunted, that former employees and patients of the hospital were still active. And so I went out in May and had the quietest night of my life. And the owner said, well, the reason is that it's always inert here for 9-10 months of the year. It only gets active around Halloween because then we have thousands of people coming through. And they're all coming through with one intention. They want to be scared. That's why you go to a haunted house, right? So they said, you should come out for Halloween because Halloween week, and especially Halloween night, the activity here is off the chain. So I said, that's kind of a long way to come for a night. I've done it once. And they said, well, how about you come for a week and investigate all week long? So I did that, and we had the craziest week. Got significant activity, and I would work in the haunted house until midnight. I would throw on scrubs and get covered in blood and go scare people. It was great fun. But then we would investigate as soon as the doors were locked at midnight. We would investigate until dawn when the energy was at its peak. And we got incredible results. But what impressed me most about it is that many of the actors are older children, ranging anywhere from 8 to 16 or 17. And there isn't a lot to do in small town Utah on an evening. And this place provides the children with somewhere to go and be creative. And they are a family. They've bonded with one another. You see kids that don't have brothers and sisters have kind of adoptive brothers and sisters in the cast that look out for them and take them under their wing. They make sure that they have help with their homework at school. It's just the most incredible thing. Those kids that needed a little extra help at home are sent with extra food packages. And I was just blown away by what a wonderful force for good this location was for this small town. And so I kind of fell in love with the place, and I fell in love with the kids that make it what it is, and I fell in love with the ghosts. And so every Halloween night, without exception, since then, I've gone back with a small team of investigators, and we will work the haunted house, and then we will go investigate. It's been a wonderful, wonderful experience.
I know I've seen that on the location. I've seen the location on TV and heard that it was very active. That's all I knew about it. And originally I thought that they sold off part of the building to the hospital part for the haunted house, and then the other part was still a nursing home at one time.
You're absolutely right. So half of the building was a nursing home, and we were never allowed in there, quite rightly. You don't get to disturb people that are, living their sunset years, and they've earned some peace and quiet. But when the nursing home moved out a couple of years ago, the whole building then became Asylum 49. And contrary to what one TV show claimed, my team was the first to go in there and investigate the new part of the building.
Well, that's how it goes. But we're at our last break.
Gotcha.
Everyone, you're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. We'll be back with Richard in just a few minutes.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experience Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh, come on. I'm Southern, but... Nope. That'll do. Hello. I am Kat Hobson, host of Paranormal Experience here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. I enjoy having guests from all areas of the paranormal, from ghosts to ufology to cryptids and beyond. You'll find some of the best researchers in their fields bringing you some great information. Join me on Wednesday nights from 8 to 10 p. Eastern here on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
Since 1948, Fate magazine has brought you reports of the strange and unknown, all of them true. Fate Radio is carrying on that tradition, bringing you the unusual, macabre, strange, and bizarre. Join host Kat Hobson Sunday nights from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern on WBHM Digital Broadcasting.
You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk, only on Paranormal Experienced Radio, broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, Birmingham, Alabama.
Thank you for listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama. The time is 45 minutes after the hour.
Welcome back to the Paranormal Pride. I'm your host, Denise Pridemore. I hope you guys have been enjoying Richard Estep tonight, because I know I have been. Before we get much further into this, I want to make sure that everybody knows where they can find you.
Yeah, you can find me online at www.richardestep.net, on Facebook, Richard Estep Author, or you can find all of my books on Amazon and other book-selling sites.
And then you said, I don't think you said it on the air, but you're going to be at Gettysburg Battlefield Bash, July 26th, if it goes off.
Assuming that travel is permitted, we're able to do it, then we're going to be at the Battlefield Bash this year. I hope to be there. Of course, we're all living from month to month right now, but that's my plan so far.
Well, actually, we're all living week to week at this point, because things could change. And then you're supposed to be at Troy Taylor's event in Alton on June, the third week of June.
Yeah, the Haunted America Conference Troy has in Alton, and as I flip through my day planner, that is the 26th, 27th, 28th of June.
That's what I thought it was. So that's at the Best Western, I believe.
I believe so.
On Homer Adams Parkway. Yeah, I know. It's sad. But again, I'm in Alton a lot. So while you're there, you might as well go White Castle. It's just up the street. It's my husband's favorite place to eat is White Castle. So,
gotcha.
I don't know. So you'll have some hauntings after the White Castles, I guarantee it. So, and maybe not good.
I hear you.
So, do you have any other events planned for later on this year after September?
Yeah, I have the Sage Paracon, which is going to be in Virginia. Very much looking forward to attending that. There are two actually. One is in Virginia, and the other one will be in Coventry, England. Sage is one of my favorite paranormal events to go to. They are so well run, and I hope to see some readers there. But the one in Virginia will be the week of October the 2nd and 4th at the Belgrove Plantation, Virginia. And you can get more information there if you go to www.sageparacon.co.uk. And I hope to see a few of your listeners there, or see some of you online and speak to you again. It
sounds like you had a full event list going on. And you did say something about Wounded Warriors. Or no, not Wounded Warriors. The other parent at Ashmore.
Oh yes, it's not at Ashmore actually. It's going to be at
our Haunted R.
Yeah, the R Theater in Auburn, Illinois. That is going to be the 28th of June.
Yeah. Okay, so the Lost Limbs Foundation.
For the Lost Limbs Foundation, Robin Terry and the Kling brothers will be a part of that. Myself and a few surprise guests.
Well, I met Brad Kling by accident at do you remember when they did Ghost Lab, the show? Okay. And they were at McPike Mansion.
Mm-hmm.
I had never been to McPike Mansion at that point, and I showed up while they were there. And Ron drove us around, and I got out of the car there to find out if it was the right place. Did not know, because Ghost Lab did not exist as a TV show yet. They were just filming the season.
Yeah.
And I got out of the car, and I got yelled at by Brad Kling.
Really?
Yeah. And then once I said my little spiel, I was just trying to find out if this was the location. I've never been over here before. And then he invited us to walk around. Mm-hmm. And I said, no, you guys are filming. You paid for the place. I was just wondering if this was the right place. That was it. And said thank you and walked away. So we could have walked around with Brad and Barry Kling. But nope, like I said, we just showed up. We did not know that it was rented out or anything like that. We'd never been there.
Oh, what a coincidence.
So that was, when I first met them, and we were like, okay, we'll be back when they have a tour. And that's what we did. That was back in, I think it was in 2009.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm. So we came back in September of 2009 and been volunteering ever since. So
wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, it's not every day. I mean, you volunteer at a location, from where you live to Utah is further than we're only driving 350 miles to volunteer. Mm-hmm. So you're going much further than 350 miles from where you live to Tooele, Utah. So
it's well worth the drive, and it for me it's like going home again and seeing family. So it's always a real pleasure for me to go and see what the kids are up to and what the ghosts are up to.
I'm going to ask you, it might be a strange question. If somebody was coming to the United States for the first time and they could only investigate two places, money's not an object, where would you tell them to go? Just two places.
Oh, that's a great question. I would say go to Gettysburg, because you can hit so many haunted locations in that area. Gettysburg has such you have the Farnsworth House and the Fairfield Inn, and just the field itself is so haunted. And then for the second, I'd say hit Iowa, hit the Villisca Axe Murder House, Malvern Manor, and then the Farrah Elementary School, because they're all within like an hour and a half drive of each other.
Okay, well, I have a secret to tell you. Everybody knows the secret. My husband's great uncle was the sheriff in the Villisca Axe Murders.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we know that location very well. Mm-hmm. We've never stayed the night, because every time we go in there during a day tour, we always had a lot of activity. And I would be irritated. I mean, for 2 weeks, not even the same person for 2 weeks after we go there.
Right.
And it's not good.
No, there's something in that house that I've spent 2 nights there, with a third on the books later this year. And there is something in that house that is not pleasant.
And I don't know what it is, because, we also live not too far from the Paola Axe Murder House, which is not a haunted location. Okay. I'm going to put that out there. It's not a haunted location, at least not known to be. It is a rental house, and they can't seem to keep people in there.
Huh.
But it happened 4 days prior to the Villisca Axe Murders. I took Ron there earlier this year. First time back in August, I took him over there.
Right.
And, we've lived here 20 years. We go to Paola whenever we have to. Took him by there, and just as we were pulling up, a train was going by. And, it's amazing how close it is. And, one of the people that they think that may have been the murderer would ride the trains, actually worked for the trains. And so you could have ran out the door and jumped on a train less than 100 yards from the back door of this house.
Yeah, and we had, here in Colorado Springs, we had 2 murders that were very, very similar to the murders in Villisca. And again, the house was close to a railroad track. And a number of axe murders around that time across the U.S. had the same fingerprints, didn't they? I don't mean literally, but the same hallmarks, the same characteristics as the Villisca killings did. That house fascinates me. It's a terribly sad place, and it's one of the more uncomfortable places I've ever spent the night. And I'm still writing my book about my experiences at Villisca, but it should be done later this year after my third visit. We're
planning on going to Farrar here in the near future, and we know Josh Hurd very well.
Mm-hmm. You mean Kiefer Sutherland?
Okay.
The guy looks so like Kiefer Sutherland, it's uncanny.
I call him just Josh and I give him heck. And of course, if you ever go back, he's afraid of being abducted. So just keep that in mind, by aliens. Make sure everybody knows that. He's got a fear of aliens. And
the guy that runs Malvern Manor is afraid of aliens?
Yeah, he is. And he loves any kind of alcohol cake. If I make a rum cake, he's all over it like white on rice. And we have a good time there. But when he first got involved in that location, we remember their very first paranormal team that went in there and all the stories that came out of that, because one of these people was one of my volunteers at the Sally House in Atchison, Kansas.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's been on my bucket list forever, the Sally House.
Take it off your list. It's not haunted. Really? A long story, and I'll tell you why later. But it's an interesting story. But I agree with your picks. I think that makes a lot of sense. You can get a lot for your time. Gettysburg and Farrar, Villisca, and Malvern are not that far away from each other. You could hit all three of those in 2 days very easily.
And I do. It's about a 9-hour drive for me from Iowa. And every year, this year it should be August, I will go hit Malvern one night, then Farrar, then Villisca. And I've been privileged to be allowed to write the haunted histories of Farrar and Malvern already. And so the Villisca book will be the third in my Iowa trilogy, I'm calling it, of haunted location books.
Well, then I have some things I want to ask you, but I'm not going to ask you on the air about Malvern, because I don't want that to ruin anything for anyone who might want to buy your books, because I'm pretty sure that the people that are here, everybody in the chat room except for 2 have been to Malvern Manor with me and my husband.
Okay.
I was actually attacked at Malvern Manor by a big fat drill bit and got scratched down my back. We weren't even there 10 minutes.
It's funny. My fellow investigator, Jill, her ear began bleeding and was lacerated within 10 minutes of walking into Malvern Manor.
Mm-hmm. This was right after the paranormal lockdown was there. When it was actually the day that they were allowed to tell people that they were going to be on there. Mm-hmm. And I went back to change because, I drive across the border in Iowa, it starts to snow. Okay. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter when. In August, it gets to be 110 for us when we go. But, in fact, Josh goes, you must be close by. It's snowing. Like, oh, well, yeah. So we go up there, and I wasn't dressed appropriately to be in a very cold house. So I went to change into some warmer clothes. And when I took off my shirt is when I got attacked. And it was a very strange thing because I hadn't seen my cousin in years. And the first time she sees me, I'm walking out of this room telling my husband I'd been attacked by a spirit. She'd never been on a paranormal investigation with us. Nothing. Hadn't seen me since she was like 12 years old. So it was an unusual reunion, to say the least. So we've got, I can't wait to hear what you have to say about Farrar. And you already wrote the book about Farrar?
Yep, it's called A Haunting at Farrar, imaginatively enough, and it's now out. John Tenney was kind enough to write the foreword.
Oh, you weren't going to get Chad?
Never
mind. That was just sarcasm. I'm sorry.
I actually couldn't get Chad to return my request for an interview. He would not respond to tweets or messages, so I left that well alone. But I will say this. I know a lot of people make fun of Chad and his screaming, but the guy spent the night alone inside Farrah, which I don't know that I would feel comfortable doing that. So even though he screams a lot, I give him a lot of props for doing what he does alone. It's quite a creepy, eerie location after dark, especially if you get on the bad side of the principal.
Well, I will say Chad really gives back to the people who he cares about. That I do know. And he's a very loving guy. I loved him as Ash in Supernatural. That was it. I loved him in that role. He's a really good actor. John E.L. Tenney, I think that he is one of the more credible people on TV when it comes to the paranormal. That was great. So I want to thank you so much for being on with me tonight. And I can't wait to someday meet you. I know that it's going to happen. I just don't know when or where. But I hope everybody had a great time tonight and is going to come back next week for the guests that I had scheduled before. They're called Colorado Martini, and they are Denise and I forgot his name already. But they will be great guests because I don't have anything on but great guests. So I hope everybody enjoyed us tonight. Thank you. You're listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting out of Birmingham, Alabama, and we will see you next Monday at 7 p.m. Central. Good night, Richard.
Thank you so much, ladies. I appreciate everything. Have a lovely evening.
We plan on it. Thank you.
Take care.
You are listening to WBHM Digital Broadcasting, the best in paranormal talk only on Paranormal Experience Radio. Broadcasting live out of Birmingham, Alabama.